What's up everyone? In this video we're doing a deep dive for Season 2 Episode 6 of House of the Dragon, titled Small Folk. Before we get going, we have deep dives for all of Season 1, and we covered the first 5 episodes of Season 2 as well, so check those out if you haven't yet.
The updated intro also has Meleys, Sunfire, and I think Aemond added into it, which was a nice little touch.
This episode was very geopolitical. We get scenes all throughout King's Landing, Driftmark, the Vale, Dragonstone, and even the Westerlands. We'll start this episode by covering the storyline of the Blacks, since Mysaria's propaganda strategy puts the Greens on their heels. We'll then cover the Greens and how they are starting to lose control of King's Landing. We'll then quickly touch on Daemon and his therapy sessions in Harrenhal, before wrapping up with a quick but important update from the Vale. No time to waste, let's jump to Dragonstone. So Corlys accepts the offer to be Rhaenyra's hand, and he pulls up to Dragonstone for a council meeting. Steffon Darklyn is called into the meeting. Steffon is a member of Rhaenyra's Kingsguard, and he's the one who rolled with her to King's Landing back in episode 3. The Darklyns were the ones who ruled Duskendale, and Steffon's father was the one who was beheaded by Cole. Steffon is called in because he has a tiny amount of Targaryen blood through his grandmother's grandmother, Arianna, so perhaps Steffon could be a real rider. Steffon is fucking pumped to get this chance, but Lord Bartimus protests. He thinks it's way too risky, since a dragon's rejection could mean death.
If I had a chance, I feel like I would also take this deal too, so I get it. Plus, after what happened to his father, a dragon would be a great revenge plot for Sir Steffon. In terms of organization here, Corlys has a lot going through his head right now, but him coming back as hand is something this council sorely needed, because there's a clear lack of respect toward Rhaenyra and a lack of overall stability.
Yeah, obviously trying to bond with the dragon is risky, but Steffon is down to try, so they pull up to the dragon pit and test out Seasmoke. This is the Targaryen version of test driving cars at the dealership. Seasmoke emerges and stares at Steffon. Steffon is obviously nervous and scared, but he manages to give some basic Valyrian commands to Seasmoke. Seasmoke actually yields for a moment, and Steffon begins to walk to the saddle. Steffon's walk is very slow, choppy, and not confident. At first he's exuding a lot of fear, but halfway through the walk, he gets cocky and says that he's done it. This sets Seasmoke off, and he immediately rises up and burns Steffon and another dragon keeper. Steffon dies while the keeper pulls out a dagger and slits his own throat. Maybe Steffon was too scared, maybe he was too cocky, maybe Seasmoke just didn't like his face. Either way, he's rejected by Seasmoke and is now dead. Rhaenyra is horrified at witnessing the whole thing.
Based on what we saw in that approach, he just wasn't built to be a dragon rider. He's moving towards Seasmoke like where anyone else we've ever seen claim a dragon has shown way more confidence, or at least energy.
Lord Bartimus bitches to Rhaenyra about all of this, and she slaps the shit out of him to get him to shut up. She's obviously feeling guilty, and Bartimus was being too annoying. Rhaenyra is also upset at losing Steffon, but Mysaria tells her that it was still the right move to try. Steffon knew the risks. Rhaenyra says that she'll keep trying to find other riders, but it's gonna be tough to get people willing to take the risk. Mysaria does have some good news to deliver though. The propaganda plan is starting to work. We'll get into more of their actual plan later on. Mysaria also gives Rhaenyra a compliment when she's holding the sword. This shit is getting hot, man. So let's get into the actual propaganda plan. Diana and Sylvie, the older woman who was Aemon's favorite prostitute, have a very public convo at a tavern where they talk about all of the extravagant feasts and parties that are going on inside the castle. Ulf overhears this conversation and is pissed about this. The small folk of King's Landing are starving, with only fish being available as animal protein. If the nobles are having feasts within the castle, this would be super fucked up. Obviously none of this is true, but Diana and Sylvie do a great job of inciting anger through false tales. Ulf even mentions that Viserys loved parties, but would always make sure that the small folk were fed. Sylvie then says, yeah, that's true, but now they've denied his daughter her claim to the throne. The seeds are being planted.
It's poetic too, because there are so many people who the crown have wronged among the small folk. It's kind of awesome to see these two specifically being the driving force of all the rumors. Aemond and Aegon's own decisions are coming back to bite them, and that's a major theme of the episode as well.
Then let the gates be closed. No one is to leave or enter save with our consent.
The small folk of King's Landing are fighting for scraps and tension is brewing. After spreading some lies to make the Greens look like greedy rulers, Mysaria then has Rhaenyra send over some boats filled with provisions over to King's Landing. The boats carry Rhaenyra's banner, and the small folk rush to grab as much food as they can. Our boy Hugh also joins in on the food run. He can't make it to the boats in time, so he just assaults another King's Landing civilian and takes his food instead. Rhaenyra's name is starting to ring again throughout the city. The entire city begins to riot and cheer for Rhaenyra, and this trouble reaches Alicent and Helaena. We'll save the rest of that for when we cover the Greens. Let's now hop over to Driftmark. Corlys returns to Driftmark to check on his ship. It's almost repaired, and he wishes for Alyn to sail with him as his first mate. Alyn tries to decline, but Corlys orders him to accept this position. Addam is annoyed at his brother for not being excited for such a great opportunity. Sailing with Corlys would be an awesome chance for money and glory and status. Although the brothers are both Corlys' bastards, Alyn and Addam have vastly different attitudes towards Corlys. Alyn is mad that Corlys has never claimed them publicly, so he tries his best to distance himself from Corlys. We even see him keeping his head shaved so none of the Valyrian blonde hair can come through. Addam has a different approach. He's not as stubborn and will take whatever opportunity there is.
Yeah, and he's being cold when he compares his brother to Corlys himself. He just wants to be recognized, like Chen mentioned. You wonder if the reason Corlys doesn't acknowledge Addam at all is due to something deeper here, or if it's just because Alyn works with him more personally and Addam is sort of in the background.
Addam soon gets his wish. While doing some routine fishing stuff, Seasmoke emerges out of nowhere. Apparently Seasmoke has been flying around a lot and getting restless. He's lonely and wants a rider. He's chosen Addam. It's a hilarious scene because Seasmoke is just chasing down Addam while he's running for his life. Seasmoke corners Addam and stares him down. I guess Seasmoke has a type, tall, dark, and handsome.
This is going to open up such a cool storyline because Addam has been overlooked and cast aside until now. He gets an eager dragon who's already had his half-brother as a rider, and he feels like he has something to prove himself. You need to get him on your side ASAP for this war.
Back at Dragonstone, Rhaenyra gets an update from Mysaria on the success of their propaganda plan. The small folk are starting to turn on the high towers. Rhaenyra isn't satisfied since she still feels that everyone around her, including Jace, thinks that she needs Daemon. Mysaria and Rhaenyra end up having a heart-to-heart. Rhaenyra tells Mysaria about Daemon always being someone who she looked up to, but she now fears that he may turn on her. Mysaria tells her own story. She was raped by her father many times, and when she got pregnant, her father mutilated her to destroy the pregnancy, and that's also why she can't have kids. Mysaria can tell that Rhaenyra sees her as worthy, perhaps even an equal. Because of that, Mysaria sees Rhaenyra as a true queen, and she'll serve her. The two of them share a hug, and then out of nowhere, Mysaria starts kissing Rhaenyra's neck, and they share a hot makeout. This was me the entire time during this scene.
Slow down, baby.
They're interrupted by Ser Laurent. He brings news of Seasmoke having a rider. This shocks Rhaenyra, and she quickly jumps on Syrax and flies off to see who this rider is.
The vibe between these two kept escalating throughout the episode if you go back and look at the scenes they shared. I like that Rhaenyra is looking to Mysaria more for reassurance than for outright decision making or protection, which is different from how she interacts with Daemon. The Jace component is a little unfair though. It's not that he doesn't believe in Rhaenyra necessarily, it's more that he's annoyed she's confiding in Mysaria and plotting in a way without keeping him in the loop, especially after the end of last episode when it seemed like they were on the same page. Rhaenyra is a bit desperate at this point, so it's also nice to hear from someone else that you're doing a good job who can empathize with you. Mysaria's own background reminded me of Larys' heart-to-heart with Aegon, and how she could connect with Rhaenyra personally from that past trauma. You also gotta remember that she has a darker side to her. We gotta see how that relationship progresses. The love triangle aspect with Daemon is also something that has to pop up at some point.
Alright, let's move on to the Greens, starting with the Lannisters. Jason Lannister is on his march towards the Riverlands, and his troops finally arrive at the Golden Tooth. The Golden Tooth is a stronghold of House Lefford, a noble house sworn to the Lannisters. Lord Humphrey Lefford greets Jason and says that he's got 500 men ready to join them on their march to Harrenhal. Jason is still the cocky douche from before, and he tells Lefford, "Fuck your 500 men, I've brought 1,000 knights, and I got another 7,000 combined archers and infantrymen." Okay, we get it, the Lannisters are stacked right now. Jason also has lions brought in just for style points, I guess. Anyways, Lord Lefford says that they're ready to march with the Lannisters whenever, but Jason says they won't march until Prince Aemond joins them on Vhagar. He tells Lefford to send a raven to King's Landing. Until Aemond responds, the Leffords will have to shelter and feed all of the Lannister men. That's gotta fucking suck.
Feudalism is a hell of a drug. Major issue in this is that Aemond is now the Prince Regent, so he can't operate as cavalierly as before on Vhagar, since exposing himself and risking death would harm the claim the Greens have for the throne, with Aegon being near death and all. Have to respect the continuity of each writer's room portraying the Lannisters as scummy, arrogant pricks.
Back at King's Landing, Aemond is already giving out orders. He first receives the message from Jason and is pissed at the audacity. Jason is indeed an asshole, but him wanting to march with Vhagar makes sense. One single dragon could wipe out an entire army, so there's no point in attacking Harrenhal if Vhagar isn't there. Aemond doesn't care though and tells Tylan to send the following message to his twin brother. If Jason doesn't attack Harrenhal soon, he'll face Aemond's wrath. Aemond also tells Tylan to create an alliance with the Triarchy and have them attack Corlys' ships. Tylan and the rest of the Green Council are concerned about working with the Free Cities, since they may turn on them at any chance. Also, the Greyjoys haven't responded to any of their letters, and Jasper Wilde suggests that maybe Alicent marry the head of the Greyjoys. Alicent vehemently says no to this idea. Aemond also orders Cole to march on Harrenhal. Cole is worried because a ton of his army was decimated at Rook's Rest, but Aemond doesn't care. His plan is to outflank Daemon with the Lannisters from the west and Cole from the east. It's a 2-week march to Harrenhal, so Cole better get going. Aemond says he'll meet them at Harrenhal when the time is right. He's confident that Daemon is afraid of him.
The major issue with Aemond that we see in this scene is that he doesn't really have an off button. He doesn't listen to others, and he has a hard time shaking any perceived disrespect. Alicent's stock is falling even further because of this, being used as little more than a pawn for marriage in some respects. That's kind of wild considering where she started the season at. Don't think we didn't catch Larys encouraging Cole to be sent off to battle away from Alicent too. Deep down, I think Aemond knows something is going on between these two.
Aemond then dismisses the council but tells Alicent to stay, and he then ruthlessly fires her. She calls him out for still being angry about his childhood. Sorry, Alicent.
You're fired! Cutthroat move by Aemond. The domestic pursuit line was especially messed up. Alicent played the mom card too late. I think she truly loves her kids, but the lack of time she's spent with each of them post-childhood hurts her here. Only 2 episodes ago, she was writing Aemond off as a war-hungry psychopath.
You know what Aemond is?
He's finally found success and respect, something that was never afforded to him as a kid. Also, she let Aegon run amok too freely, and Aemond bore the brunt of that. Now we can see it coming back around. She doesn't deserve what's happening to her, but she did contribute to some of it.
Aemond also hears about the anger of the small folk from Larys. Aemond responds by saying that's why breaking the Stepstones blockade is very important. Larys then tries to angle to be Aemond's hand, but Aemond sees through all of this and calls him an ass-kissing toad. He tells him to go send word to Otto Hightower. Aemond wants Otto back his hand.
Larys can be an asset when he's trying to offer others strength and advantage in their time of need. Aemond already believes he has absolute strength and trusts his own instincts over those of Larys. If you recall this comment made toward Larys last ep about Harrenhal.
Tell me, Lord Strong, how I can trust the counsel of a man who leaves the jewel of the Riverlands to be plucked by our enemy.
The man is smart, but he lacks any loyalty or morals. You don't want a number 2 with that profile. This was one of the most incredible takedowns of the season so far. Funny to see Jasper taking this all in. Otto is someone that has backed Aemond's way of thinking from the very start.
What that rogue Aemond has done in winning Vhagar to our side. The boy was right. It's worth 1,000 times the price he paid.
This choice makes perfect sense since Aemond is lacking the tools of diplomacy to deal with the domestic front.
As this is going down, Master Orwyle reports that Aegon has woken up. Aemond is unhappy about this news and he pays a visit to Aegon. He's there to see if Aegon is going to snitch on him. Aegon is barely awake and is terrified to see Aemond. Aegon says he remembers nothing, and this gets Aemond to leave him alone. Obviously Aegon remembers, but he does the smart thing. Otherwise, Aemond is going to find another way to kill him. Shit, he still might.
When he shoved the king's ball into Aegon's burned stomach wound, I almost gagged a little bit. It felt like I was watching the Stephen King classic Misery play out in King's Landing for a second. You get a strong feeling that Orwyle knows what's going on here.
Meanwhile, Alicent now has a lot of time on her hands after being fired, so she finally starts spending some time at Aegon's bedside. Seeing her firstborn this mangled is making her really think about how she's done as a mother. She also catches up with Gwaine before he has to march out again with Cole. They talk about how they grew up and how Otto chose for Alicent to grow up at court and for Gwaine to grow up in Old Town. Speaking of Otto, he hasn't been returning any of the ravens that Alicent has been sending, and no one really knows where he is.
We also get word the Hightowers are having a little bit of trouble with the Beesbury clan. They really thought they were going to take our boy out like that with no repercussions.
Anyways, Alicent ends up talking with Gwaine about her youngest son, Daeron, who by the way we haven't met yet. Daeron's growing up in Old Town, and according to Gwaine, he seems like a happy teen. He's 16 now, he's smart, he's talented, he's good with the sword, the ladies love him, and he's kind. Really ironic that the one son that didn't grow up near Alicent seems to be the most normal. She blames herself, but Gwaine tells her it's tough for any child to grow up in the Red Keep and be normal. I really like Gwaine Hightower, he seems like a solid guy.
Yeah, both Aemond and Aegon have their issues and have been corrupted by the privileges and the draw of power that comes simply from being so close to the throne, but perhaps not deserving it. She's on an island right now in terms of her influence. Her future in King's Landing greatly depends on Aegon's recovery. She also feels on a deeper level that she's failed her children in some way based on what's befallen them. Wasn't expecting a combo like this between these two. What we can draw from this is that Otto brought Alicent along for a reason. He most likely saw her potential. Maybe the Otto reunion will spell good fortune for Alicent.
As mentioned earlier, Alicent and Helaena get caught up in the King's Landing riot. The small folk are chanting, "Long live Queen Rhaenyra," and tossing things at Alicent. I think she even gets fucking sliced or stabbed. The Kingsguard try their best to escort both queens back to the castle. This one old guy grabs Alicent. I don't think he was trying to attack her or anything, but the Kingsguard is inexperienced, and one of the members slices the guy's arm off. Alicent screams at them to sheathe their swords, but it's too late. The crowd goes into a frenzy, and they swarm one of the Kingsguard members, Estermont. I think he's one of Aegon's drinking buddies from earlier in the season. Alicent and Helaena barely escape as Estermont gets stabbed to death.
The uprising scenes remind me a lot of the Revolution scenes from Les Mis. The dude in the crowd screaming the Fish Queen line is funny as hell once you realize he's just simply pissed off that the blockade has him eating nothing but fish. Helena's only 2 interactions with the small folk have been pure nightmare fuel, which is kinda sad. She's probably the nicest person in the show. These are the consequences of Aemond and Aegon's rule. Rhaenyra's Uber Eats delivery didn't hurt matters either.
As for Larys, after being called a bitch by Aemond, he has nowhere to go but crawl back to Aegon. He sits at his bedside and prevents him from taking more poppy since it dulls the mind. He breaks the tough news to Aegon. One of his legs is busted for good. All Aegon has now is his mind. Larys talks about how he was born with a twisted foot and how his dad thought that someone in their family was casting evil spells. Is he referring to Alice Rivers? Anyways, Larys basically tells Aegon that his life is in danger because Aemond is currently ruling. Obviously, Larys' entire motive is to give Aegon enough fuel to recover and become ruler again.
Earlier in the episode, we get a weird connection to Aegon and some of Helena's bugs. It's the cricket that has stopped chirping, and she makes that comment. At first, I didn't really get it, but then rewatching the episode again, it seems like she might be onto something. I don't fully grasp her foresight, but it's a pretty cool character trait. This little pair-up makes perfect sense because Larys needs to gain his influence back, and Aegon needs to stay alive. This halftime speech was probably the most I've ever supported Larys. He's a pretty bad guy. I liked looking into his origin story and the motivations he has. He feels strangely human for about 3 seconds. It's not all for the sake of being kind though. In addition to Aemond's reign, he doesn't want Otto around, and Aegon is the anti-Otto candidate here since he's already kicked him to the curb one time. The common ground between him and Aegon was still pretty moving. Sadly, he'll probably do something incredibly underhanded to lose all this goodwill as a character.
Alright, let's jump over to Daemon up in Harrenhal. He's now having visions of Viserys and reliving some past moments. He has a flashback of a convo that he had with Viserys in Season 1 when Viserys sent Daemon away to Runestone. Viserys' wife and newborn son had just died, and this fucker Daemon celebrated the whole thing. Daemon has to relive this and see just how hurt his brother was by his actions. He emerges from this vision rattled as fuck and starts accusing Simon Strong of being the one who's causing these visions. Despite Alice Rivers being the obvious culprit, Daemon's paranoia nearly causes him to kill Simon.
In the midst of an existential crisis fueled by hallucinations of the past, Viserys was always going to be Daemon's final boss. This is the first time Daemon has appeared downright terrified of what he had to confront. Simon shows a ton of patience after, but what other choice did he really have? Keep in mind, you're dealing with a version of Daemon who's basically been through The Shining at this point.
I'm not gonna hurt you. You didn't let me finish my sentence.
Daemon then gets ready to run away from Harrenhal. Poor Caraxes, just being bored as fuck. Anyways, Alice calls Daemon out for always running away when things get tough. Daemon is grappling with the idea that Rhaenyra never even wanted the crown, and Alicent lectures Daemon that those who don't want the crown are often best suited to rule. The crown isn't a prize, it's a burden. All of this hits Daemon hard, and he finally asks for help. Actually, he technically asks for counsel. Either way, he swallows his pride, and Alicent tells him that the Rivermen are all psychos who fight each other all the time. House Tully is the only stabilizing and rational voice in the area, so getting their support is paramount. She tells Daemon to stay put at Harrenhal, and in 3 days' time, things will shift.
Throughout this convo, Daemon's ego takes a beating, but it's for the good of the realm. Like we've hinted at before, this has always been about not getting the crown and having something to prove to everybody else. We're watching the green side lose stability as we speak because of someone who strove for the crown to a fault. Alicent dropping some insane levels of perspective on Daemon while burning him in the process was entertaining. I like the chemistry these two have.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of sexual tension, but maybe I'm just projecting. Anyways, Daemon has yet another vision of Viserys when Emma died. In this vision, Viserys is distraught and crying, but Daemon consoles him and actually apologizes. A huge therapeutic moment for Daemon. He then awakens to Sir Simon Strong telling him that Lord Grover is now dead. This means that young Oscar Tully is the leader of the Riverlands. Since the Tully Maesters were unable to improve Grover's condition, Alice Rivers volunteered to help, and sadly there was nothing to be done and Grover ended up passing. Both Daemon and Simon know that Alice expedited Grover's death. With the old man out of the way, it's now time for Daemon to work on gaining Oscar Tully's allegiance. Gonna be a bit tricky since Daemon was such an asshole to the young boy earlier.
He's got a chance to right some of the wrongs, even if this one was just a hallucination. I don't think it's coincidental that he just started leveling honestly with Alice and now he's having better experiences. On the Tully issue, she did say the winds would change in 3 days. I guess that's code for poison. That look of disgust from Simon followed by the smile from Daemon was good, but Daemon quickly returning to reflecting on his past trauma and mistakes felt a little too real.
Lastly, a very interesting storyline is developing in the Vale. As Rhaena is taking a walk with young Joffrey, she comes across some charred sheep carcasses. Obviously the work of a dragon. The baby dragons that they brought aren't big enough to do this damage, so there must be an adult dragon somewhere. What the fuck? Lady Jane Eyre then pulls up to tell Rhaena that Prince Reggio of Pentos has agreed to host them. Lady Eyre has a ship ready to take them, but Rhaena's mind is elsewhere. She tells Lady Eyre that there is clearly a large dragon already at the Vale. Lady Eyre admits that this is true. Apparently a wild dragon has been flying around the Vale searching for food. Quite the opportunity for Rhaena if she wants it.
Yeah, she did not register a word of what Lady Jane said about Pentos. She was thinking about dragons the whole time. Rhaena following the classic underdog to hero mold with those words toward Joffrey at the beginning. It would be awesome to see her finally claim a dragon. This would be a huge get for the black side because this dragon is most likely Sheepstealer. Known as a wild dragon in the past, Sheepstealer is a fully grown dragon, unlike Vermax, and is supposed to be larger than Moondancer. This addition would help make up for the loss of Meleys.
Alright, that does it for our breakdown of episode 6. Appreciate everyone for watching. We will catch y'all later.